Hey everybody, Mike Naso here from IPR365.com and podweather.com with an update on the tropics. And we have two main systems of note in the Atlantic Basin at this time. We have Hannah, which is up here getting a bit better organized, heading to the Carolinas. It should be there within 12 hours. And it could potentially become a weak hurricane, but that's not set in stone at all. Then further to the southeast of Hannah, we have Major Hurricane Ike, and we now even have watches and warnings out for the Bahamas and the Turks and Caicos Islands, as Ike really is going to be a force as it heads in that general direction the next 24 to 36 hours. Let's start with Hannah as of 5 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. It was at 30.8 north, 78.7 west. It was 70 mile per hour tropical storm gusting to 85, close to hurricane strength, moving north at 19, due north, and it is expected to have more of an eastward motion within 12 hours or so. That pressure 984 millibars. By this time tomorrow should be near the Delmarva, and by this time Sunday way up here near the Canadian Maritimes, getting out of the picture, and we won't have to deal with it anymore. We do have those watches and warnings out, including hurricane watches, with the just in case it becomes a hurricane before it strikes. And you can see the wind field with Hannah is pretty significant, so we're going to have to keep a very close eye on this system the next 24 hours because it is going to cause some problems up there for areas of the Carolinas. Again, on visible satellite imagery, Hannah looking a bit better organized there as it wraps up, and even on the infrared, you could definitely tell Hannah's been bursting right near the center of circulation, which is a sign that it might try and tighten up into a hurricane before landfall. Now, radar does show there is some good rotation and good precip, but nothing like an eye wall yet trying to build. But we do have those bands coming in anywhere from Daytona Beach all the way up to the South Carolina coast, including Savannah. You guys are getting some hefty rainfall from Hannah. The models, again, in good agreement, perfect agreement, that this thing's going to continue north, then north-northeast, then northeast, and then finally east-northeast across the Atlantic. Very, very fast. By 4, 5, 6 days, it could be way out here in the far reaches of the northern Atlantic, and we won't have to deal with it anymore. Now, what else are we going to have to deal with? We're going to have to deal with Hurricane Ike, and you can see it spinning there to the west-southwest, just south of west. Note the last frame there, the eye ominously poking out. Very tight hurricane. Let's get the latest on this. This is as of 5 p.m. Eastern Time. It was at 22.9 north, 64.1 west. Winds were down to 115 miles per hour, gusting to 140. It's a dangerous Category 3 hurricane. It's moving west-southwest quickly at 15 miles per hour, and recon confirmed that pressure 958 millibars. It is expected to weaken maybe a bit more down to a Cat 2 as that northerly wind shear continues. But then, by the time Saturday night rolls around tomorrow night, this thing should have a very good environment for strengthening. Right as it sails into the Turks, Caicos, and the southeastern Bahamas, we now have hurricane watches. Those will be turned into warnings. By the time Monday rolls around, this could be a Category 4 heading just south of the Bahamas. And then by Tuesday, impacting the Florida Keys as an extremely dangerous Category 4 hurricane. And by Wednesday, making that move into the Gulf of Mexico. Again, this is very dangerous. If the track is a bit further to the north, it could impact the Abaco Islands and then up towards the Georgia coastline. If it's further to the south, it could even impact Cuba and come into the northwest Caribbean and the southeast Gulf. Right now, the Florida Keys and southeast Florida are in a very bad situation because by the time Tuesday rolls around, they could have an extreme Hurricane Ike bearing down on them. Again, you can see the wind field with this thing as a perfect tight little circle like we see with many of these major hurricanes as it sails west-southwest. Eventually it'll turn back west, and that's going to be very, very ominous for residents in Florida and the Bahamas for sure. Here's the infrared satellite imagery the last 24 hours or so, and clearly, one, the system's weakened, and two, it's lost latitude. You could tell there it tried to fight off the northerly motion, and now it is getting pretty torn up there at the end. You can see it kind of looks like a thumb. However, once it gets under that better environment, all systems should be go for some serious strengthening, and that's why even if this thing weakens to a Category 2 hurricane, it could easily come back to a Category 3, 4, and let's just say a very dangerous hurricane as it moves through the Bahamas. Is quite possible. The Hurricane Center even noting that rapid intensification cannot be ruled out. Taking a look at the visible satellite loop from the Hurricane Center website, right at the end there, note that it even looks a little bit better as the sun starts to set right there. Clearly still an eye that is within the deep convection, but again, a tiny hurricane as this northerly wind shear has been impacting it pretty negatively, and you can see that it's definitely taken a toll on the shape of Ike. Here's the model guidance, and again, the current motion, if you extended that out for a few days, would be into eastern Cuba, but again, it will eventually start to move back west and then maybe west-northwest. The key is, does it turn? And if it does turn, where does that turn occur? You can see a few of the BAM models here take the system very far to the southwest and then bend it west and then up and around real quick. However, other models like the GFS keep it straight west into Florida. The UK Met kind of does a very gradual bend all the way into the Gulf of Mexico. The European model has been showing into the Gulf as well. You can see the H-Wurf model in 102 hours has it bearing down the Florida Keys as a Category 4 hurricane, and you can see the flow for a hurricane like Ike right now would be generally north, but as Hannah gets on out of here, we're going to have that flow rebuild, and it's going to be a serious situation. You can see the H-Wurf then takes that model, that frame should have been in there. Back to the H-Wurf model. Category 4 hurricane up into southwest Florida, very, very dangerous. The GFDL takes it over Cuba, weakens it, and then brings it back out, and is strengthening it as a Cat 3 as it heads towards southwest Florida. Again, the Canadian takes it towards Florida in 120 hours. The NOGAPS has it striking Florida and then kind of moving up the coastline into the eastern Gulf, west coast of Florida. And this is all because of the high pressure. You can currently see the wind shear. We have that very favorable upper-level anticyclone just to the east of Hannah. If Hannah were under that, it'd be strengthening a lot more right now. But that's causing that wind shear right over the top of Ike, and that's why it's been weakening. But as it gets in a more favorable environment, it's going to have very, very favorable conditions all the way through the Bahamas. You can see that better on the tendencies. You can see Hannah's outflow here and the flow from the north impacting Ike. That's all going to change in about 36 hours or so. Again, here's the vorticity. You can see Hannah, Ike, Josephine all lined up like hotcakes in the Atlantic. Now, as far as water is concerned, there is some upwelling from Hannah here that Ike will be passing, but as it moves into the Bahamas, we're not going to have to deal with any more upwelling, and the waters get upwards of 85 degrees, maybe even higher, as you get close to the Florida Keys. Now, we've seen many hurricanes like this in the past. 1919, a Category 4 hurricane, September 10th of 1919, and this hurricane is probably going to hit the Keys around the 9th or 10th, Hurricane Ike, so that's kind of interesting. But again, that was a monster hurricane for the Keys. Florida got hit 1926, Cat 4 into Miami, 1928, Cat 4 into Lake Okeechobee, 1929, a Cat 4 nearing the Keys that weakened before landfall, 1933, Cat 3 into the West Palm Beach area, 1935, Category 5 strongest hurricane to hit our country into the Florida Keys. You had a Cat 4 weakening to a Category 3, 1945 for southeast Florida. Category 4 hurricane into Fort Lauderdale, 1947. 1949, a major hurricane into South Florida. 1960, Hurricane Donna. That's 10 hurricanes. Those are 10 hurricanes that did what Ike may do. This is not unusual. We've actually been quite lucky that other than Andrew in 92, we really haven't seen anything like this threat since Donna in 1960. Don't want to forget about Josephine. It's down, barely a tropical storm moving northwest at 8. It should be a depression and stay weak, move northwest. You can see there on the satellite imagery, it is looking very ill-defined on the latest visible satellite imagery, and we're probably not going to have to deal with that for much longer if it keeps up that very ragged appearance on satellite. Again, another wave moving off the coast of Africa there that we're going to have to watch as it continues to progress. You can see it better on infrared there. In the final analysis on the tropics, we do have this interesting area south of Mexico. Watch that, but nothing should really occur with it. In the eastern Pacific, back to the Atlantic, we do have Hannah. That'll be making landfall in the next 10 to 12 hours, maybe as a hurricane, but certainly as a strong tropical storm. And that's going to cause some blustery weather, but it's going to get out of here fast. The ridge will rebuild. You'll have that clockwise flow that is going to continue to push Hurricane Ike, major Hurricane Ike, to the west-southwest, then west, and then eventually up generally towards the Keys, north coast of Cuba, southeast Florida, over the next 24 to 36 hours. Again, Josephine's not an issue. This wave shouldn't be an issue. The main issue once Hannah gets out of here will be focused on Hurricane Ike. That's it for the tropical update. Stay tuned to IPR365.com for live coverage of Hannah, and by this weekend, early next week, live coverage of Hurricane Ike. I'll see you next time.